Welcome again to the Mesa City Council meeting for November the 18th. I'll note for the record that all of our council are present. We will begin this meeting with an invocation offered by Reverend Mindy Tucker with Unity of Mesa, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand for the prayer and remain standing for the pledge.
Thank you, Mayor Giles. Thank you, City Council. Thank you to everyone who is in this room, for together we acknowledge that there's only one presence and one power active in the universe and in our lives. A presence and power we call God, God the good omnipotence. It is sourcing our wisdom from this deep well. It is sourcing our peace from this deep well of good. It is sourcing our spiritual intelligence from this deep well of good, knowing that every mind and heart that is present in this room and in this meeting has come with as open a mind as possible, with as open a heart as possible, knowing that every word, every thought, every idea we share coming from the highest and best for the people of the city of Mesa. In gratitude for this wisdom, for spiritual intelligence, for our ability to speak our truth, in gratitude for the presence of our future in this room, the young people who are in our program, who are open to curiosity and discovery of ways they too in the future will lead and provide for the highest and best of the people of the city of Mesa. In gratitude for all these things and more, we say thank you, God, and amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we have on the front row our Mayor's Youth Committee. Guys, would you mind standing just so we can get a feel for who you are? Thank you. These are students from all of Mesa's high schools that participate in a year-long program learning about the city, and at the end, thank you, you can be seated. They give us some really great recommendations. So thank you to these young people for being here and for participating in that program.
Let's clap for them.
Okay. First item on our agenda is to consider the consent agenda. We'll invite Ms. King to please come forward and read the consent agenda. Lily?
Mayor and council members, these are the items on the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk will be considered as a group by the City Council and will be enacted on with one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless a council member or citizen requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as a separate item. Item 2, approval of minutes from previous meetings as written. Item 3A, act on liquor license application for Mascadores Taco Shop, 2706 East University Drive. Item 3B, act on liquor license application for Payway Asian Kitchen, 1902 South Val Vista Drive. Item 3C, act on liquor license application for Harkins Theater, 6950 East Superstition Springs Boulevard. Item 4A, approving one-year term contract of excess workers' compensation insurance and workers' compensation self-insurance surety bond. Item 4B, approving one-year term contract for DNA crime lab supplies for the Mesa Police Department. Item 4C, approving 3-year term contract with the renewal options for drone and first responder technology for the Mesa Police Department. This is funded from the Public Safety Sales Tax Funds. Item 4D, approving the use of cooperative contract for command response vehicle systems upgrade for the Mesa Fire and Medical Department. Item 4E, approving the use of cooperative contract for on-call manhole rehabilitation services for the Water Resources Department. Item 4F, approving 3-year term contract with 2-year renewal options for heavy-duty cab and chassis parts for the Fleet Services Department. Item 4G, approving term contract for heavy-duty truck brake pads and wheel parts for the Fleet Services Department. Item 5A, approving resolution to enter into intergovernmental agreement with the Mesa United School District Number 4 for the cooperative use and purchase of IT and related services to reduce operations and capital costs. Item 5B, approving resolutions for zoning case 23-935 for property west of Mesa Drive and south of Southern Avenue. Major site plan modification to allow for a limited service restaurant with a drive-through facility. Item 6A, introduction of ordinance amending Title 6, Chapter 10 of the Mesa City Code entitled Public Park Regulations, including proposed changes to camping restrictions. Item 6B, introduction of ordinance amending Title 6, Chapter 1 of the Mesa City Code to add new Section 23 entitled Urban Camping related to camping on certain city property. Item 6C, introduction of ordinance for zoning case 23-771 for property generally located west of Record Road and north of Main Street. Rezone with a planned area development overlay and site plan review to allow for a multiple residence development. Item 6D, introduction of ordinance for zoning case 23-994 for property generally located north of Southern Avenue and east of Greenfield Road. Rezone with planned area development overlay, council use permit, and major site plan modification to allow for expansion of a mini storage facility. Item 6E, introduction of ordinance for zoning case 24-602 for property located west of Country Club Drive on the north side of Main Street. Rezone with a planned area development overlay, council use permit, and site plan review to allow for multiple resident development. Item 6F, introduction of ordinance for zoning case 24-649 for property located south of Elliott Road on the east side of Power Road. Rezone with a bonus intensity zone overlay and major site plan modification to allow for a modification to a group of commercial center. Items 7A through 7N have been pulled from the consent agenda. Item 8A, approving ordinance for proposed amendments to Title 4, Chapters 3 and 9 of the Mesa City Code pertaining to electric vehicle charging standards for new construction. And item 8B, approving ordinance for proposed amendments to Section 11-43-7 of Title 11 of the Mesa City Code pertaining to freeway landmark signs. So, Mayor and Council members, these are the items on the consent agenda.
Mosley, do we have any requests to speak on an item that's on the consent agenda?
No request, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Freeman has made a motion, seconded by Councilmember Spilsbury, for approval of the consent agenda. Please vote. Thank you. That passes unanimously. First item off of our agenda is introducing ordinances and resolutions related to utility rates and setting December the 2nd of this year as the date for the public hearing on these ordinances. So again, just to tell you what that is, we've previously given notice of potential utility rate increases. Tonight, we will introduce that ordinance, and then the next city council meeting is when we come back and have a public hearing and vote on the merits of that, those proposed ordinances and resolutions. But we're happy to have a discussion tonight on the topic as well. So we will begin with, I'll invite a staff presentation to come up and give us an overview of agenda items 7A through 7N. Brian?
So good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Ritchell. I'm the Deputy of the Office of Management and Budget. So as the Mayor indicated, I'll go over the presentation for the utility rate recommendations, assistance programs, and homeowner comparison. So I'll briefly go through some of these as has been described before you, the utility operations. Each utility is operated in a separate business center and treated in one fund. The reserve balance provides a safety net for unforeseen conditions. Then also the reserve balance is used to smooth rate adjustments year after year, and this has been the philosophy of the city for many years, of just the smoothing of the utility rates. Here are the 5 principles that the utility fund we abide by for our principles. We also have financial policies, but here is we look to do a balanced net sources and uses. We try to keep the reserve fund balance 20% or higher, and that helps with our credit rating agencies and bond issuance. Rate adjustments that are predictable and smooth throughout the forecast. Equitable between residential and non-residential rates, and then also affordability of the utility rates themselves. So the next section that I'd like to briefly talk about is the homeowner comparison overview. And what is included in the homeowner comparison is a basket of expenses for a homeowner living in either the city of Mesa and then any comparable cities that we do throughout the valley. And what's included in there is the primary property tax and secondary property tax, also a city sales tax, water, wastewater, and also solid waste. So those categories there, those 5 categories, is what encompasses what a homeowner would expect to spend in owning a home. So with that included in here, the next slide is the homeowner comparison itself. And this is on an annual basis. So the numbers you see, so for instance, for the city of Mesa, the homeowner is $2,191. That's an annual. And what's included in there is down at the bottom, you'll see that we've got the primary property tax, the secondary property tax, the city sales tax, the solid waste, water, and wastewater, those categories that I indicated before. So we take that as a whole, an annual, and then compare them to the other cities. So if a resident in Mesa went to go to either Gilbert or Chandler or Scottsdale, they can see if they use the same amount of water or buy the same amount of goods, things like that, and they go to this city, that's how much they would look to spend on an annual basis. So as you see, Mesa is right in the middle there, like one step below. We're tied with the city of Tempe at $2,191. And then there's a few things that are different in here also. As you know, the city of Mesa does not have a primary property tax, others do. Also, the city of Mesa does not tax food for home. So when you go to the grocery store and buy food to consume at home, you are not taxed in the city of Mesa, but you are taxed in other cities. So as you notice for the town of Gilbert, they used to be below us. However, now estimated for April of 2025, they will be above us. That is because they are increasing their sales tax from 1.5% to 2%. Also, they are implementing a second phase of their water increase, another 25%. So that is included in there to show how they would compare, a homeowner would compare from going from Mesa to Gilbert. So the next topic we wanted to kind of talk about was the big projects that the city is doing to invest in their water, wastewater facilities. One is the Central Mesa Reuse Pipeline. So that one is about $210 million. What that does for the city is we'll take our wastewater, and then we will pump it down, the recycled water, down to the Gila River Indian community. What we do is, in exchange, we will get $200 per acre foot cheaper than the city rate. So right now, the city pays a significant amount more. What that does is we're able to use that to buy cheaper water off the Central Arizona project where we buy half our water. So also with that, we also receive the Gila River Indian community's higher priority water than what the city's allocated. So for instance, what we've all been hearing about is the Colorado River and pulling back on some of their water. And so what would that do? The city with these rights would be at the top of those seniority rights of being able to utilize that water. While others may have to cut back, the city would be guaranteed those rights from the Gila Indian community. Also is the Signal Butte water treatment expansion. That's about $200 million. What this is helping is increasing the 1 million gallons per day to serve the city through build out. This helps out the southeast portion of Mesa and all the commercial and residential growth that is happening down there. And then the other one is the AMI, which is the advanced metering infrastructure. And what this is all of those meters being changed out, so residents can then go online through a portal and see what their usage is, and either 15 minutes, an hour. But what would happen is they would be able to see if they can detect a leak sooner than waiting to get a bill, which may be 15, 30 days later, trying to figure it out, where they can be able to go see it in almost real time and be able to check to see if they have a leak, which would help save water for them, help lower their bill, but then also help save water for the city as a whole. So with those projects, I just want to briefly go over the expense pressures for the water utility, the debt service payments. So as you see with the blue line is our current forecast, and the orange line is our prior forecast. With a lot of the projects that are going on and some of these significant ones, we see that utility debt pressure from those projects. And then same with the wastewater. We have some wastewater projects that we are performing right now. And as you notice, that debt service to be able to pay for those projects is going to be coming on the financials within the next few years. The next slide is the expense pressures for operating costs. As we all know, inflation went up significantly. It has cooled down, however, prices have not come down. And so we are still seeing significant pressures for operating costs. For instance, we have $1.2 million ongoing for the Val Vista Water Treatment Plant operating costs. Then also water commodity cost of 1.1. And then solid waste is they just did some agreements for landfill charges. That is increasing by $3 million. And then also some of their fleet is aging, and their fleet costs, maintenance, are going up about $3 million. So those are the operating cost pressures of the utility. This next slide, what I wanted to show was the water customer profile. So we took the latest data we have, which is June 2023 through May of 2024, and showed on one pie chart what the water consumption in kgal is, and then also a percentage. So the one on the left is, in orange, is non-residential consumption, and then in blue is residential consumption. So what you see is the non-residential is now passing and is consuming more water than the residential, where previously, maybe 3-4 years ago, residential was the bigger portion of the consumption. But now it's shifted to non-residential. On the other chart, the other pie chart, what I wanted to show you was how small the non-residential is. It is 11% of our accounts, and residential is 89%. So a smaller portion of the accounts is using a majority of the water. So the next slide, what I want to show you here is water customers by tier. So what this shows is, on the left is usage by residential tier. So when we say tier 0, that is 0 to 3 kgal, so 3,000 gallons. And that first 3,000 gallons is actually included in the service charge that is put on the bill. So if a customer just uses 2, maybe 3,000 gallons, they will not jump into the tier 1, 2s, or 3s. They will it's part of their service charge that they receive. So with that, the tier 0 and tier 1, what you see is the first column is January. We took data from January of 2024 in the wintertime. And then we took, the next column is July of 2024 in the summertime. And as you notice, the usage is different. As we all know, in the wintertime, we usually don't use as much. In the summertime, we use a little bit more, depending on if you have outdoor grass or irrigation, things like that. But what I want to show you is 2/3 of customers are in tier 0 or tier 1 during the wintertime. But then once you get to the summertime, that moves up, because those customers move up to either the 0 goes up to tier 1, or tier 1 goes up to tier 2 and tier 3 because of the summertime grass over the seeding and everything else. So what I want to show you is that during that winter time, about 2/3 of our customers are within the tier 0 or tier 1. And what we look as a typical customer is 6,000 gallons, and that is right at the tier 1. So the revised typical customer residential, this one is, so when we came to council in September, the staff was proposing a 5.5% increase. So what that would have done was, with the service charge usage, the effective increase would have been 5.5% for a small, which we consider tier 0, a small customer, would have been about $1.70. And then on the residential typical, so about 6,000 gallons, the service charge was 5.5, same with the usage, and the effective increase was about 5.5. That was about $2.28 increase. However, council recommended that we try to lower that service charge. So in the right-hand side for the proposed, the service charge now dropped to 4%. So the usage charge went up a little. However, the effective increase still reduced to the 4% for the small typical. And then for the residential, for the typical residential, it uses about 6,000 gallons. The effective increase still decreased to 4.48%.
Brian, while you're there, just real quickly, you mentioned a comparison with another city, Gilbert. That what percent did you say their rates went up by?
So they are looking to do 25%. Previous year, last year, they did a 50%.
So would that be related to this 4%?
Yes, that would.
So just kind of get a context of what we're proposing is only 4% for the lowest users and 4.48%. And Brian just noted that 2/3 of our community would be doing less than 5%, where adjoining communities are doing over 20%. Thank you, Brian.
So to put that in dollars, so for a total bill of most residents that receive water, wastewater, and solid waste, to put that into dollars, total bill for a small, so this is still tier 0, the small, the increase would go from $85.76 to about $90.45, so about a $4.69 per month. So what that increases is about a 5.5% increase on a total bill. So, and then with the residential monthly bill, the typical, this is about 6,000 gallons. The total increase for their total bill would be about $5.60, which is about 5.6% increase for their total bill if they receive those three.
Yes, Mr. Summers.
Just looking at, go back to the last slide. Is this the same slide? Very good. Nope, next one. Yep, perfect. So water, wastewater, solid waste, those are the three services that all of us receive in the city, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so whether you're resident or not, but there are services that, gas, for example, is a little different than the city of Mesa, doesn't follow the city of Mesa, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
We do not provide that service to every resident.
Okay. So for my district, what I'm looking at, this top one represents my wife and I. All right, so we moved, our kids have moved out of the house, right? So it's just the two of us. We look at, we ended up moving into a different house. It's a little bit bigger house, but it's a smaller yard. We don't have a pool anymore. We don't have landscaping. We don't have grass. We use xeriscape. So what we've found, to your point, was during the winter, typically, this is what we fit into. 3,000 gallons does it for us. With water, wastewater is the same, solid waste is the same. And we will move up a little bit in the summer because we do have, the trees that we do have are gonna take a little bit more. So we're up just slightly more. But the thing that's missing in here is gas, right? So I know where Mr. Brady lives. He's serviced by Mesa Gas. And his rates are gonna go up a little bit more because gas isn't reported on this. But I live in Eastmark, and that's Southwest Gas, and I was sitting out by my gas fire pit this morning thinking this is really wonderful, but I wonder how much I'm burning up. So how much more of the gas rates going up to add to this Southwest Gas versus MesaGas? Do you remember off the top of your head, or is this a question we have to
I'd have
answer
to
later?
get back to you on that one.
What's that?
I'd have to get back to
Give
you.
us some time,
Okay.
we'll get it for you.
I know we have it, so we'll get that answer to you. And the reason I bring this up is, one, the rates are gonna go up a little bit more, maybe for me, because Southwest Gas has increased their rates twice in the last 2 years to cover cost. So for me, I know when the gas went up, I think their gas went up far more 2 years ago than what was anticipated. Their profit margin, and the number that sticks in my head is like 51 million over what they anticipated rising. Then they still had another gas rise this year. So I know that those prices have gone up for us, but Mesa is tied to that gas rate. Southwest gas rate, and I believe it's lower. So I'd like to know what those comparisons are.
So Mayor, Councilmember Summers, the service charge is recommended for a $0 increase for the service charge. However, some of the usage may increase a little bit, but the service charge itself.
Service charge for
is
gas
zero
is staying the same.
for residential.
You're making me wish I stayed in where I was. All right, so, and then the service gas area also extends well beyond our boundaries, right? There's another area that
Yes,
we collect from?
outside the city in the Santan area,
Okay, and that's Magma.
Magma service area.
So what happens with those folks will see the same rates as the City of Mesa residents within the service gas
There's a
area?
specific rate for them.
We have a specific rate. There's a specific city rate and then a specific Magma
All right,
rate.
and
So
there's a transfer of revenue that happens for all these accounts that goes into our general fund for public safety. Is that applied to those rates as well for Magma that are outside the City of Mesa?
yes, it does all operating revenue for the gas.
All right, so I just wanted to bring that up because, and then there's an electric company too, that's 5 square miles,
Correct.
and that's not in my district. So if you're in my district, that doesn't apply. All right.
So Mayor, Council, so the next one we're going to talk about is the utility fund contribution to the general fund. And so back in around mid-1940s, I believe it was 1945, the city decided to eliminate the primary property tax and then have a contribution from the utility fund into the general fund to support the general fund and do away with the primary property tax. Primary property tax has been put on the ballot a few times within the last, I think, 20 years and has been voted down. However, in March of 2020, council decided to do approve an ordinance that required 30% of the utility fund operating revenues be transferred to the general fund. And what this does is also what council approved was 25% of that 30% would go directly to public safety, and then 5% would go to general operating departments, but also that does include the support for public safety. So in the next slide, what I wanted to detail was just how that 25% and 5% allocated out. So the whole 25% goes towards police, fire, and municipal court. So about so the budgeted amount is 136 million. So 113 million would go to support police, fire, and the municipal court. And then that other 5%, which is about 22 million, there's still about 11, almost $12 million that will go towards public safety support. And then the rest of it, other services, courts, parks, libraries, is about $11 million. So the total 136, there's about $125.4 million of that transfer that goes to support public safety. So the next one I will go to is utility assistance programs. That's been a topic coming up. So just to give council an update, we do offer assistance with our utilities. One is the limited income senior discount rate. So just over 900 customers get a 30% discount if they apply and get it on their water service charge. So what this is that 30% on the water service charge equates to almost just under $10 a month. So that's about $120 a year discount that a senior could get off of their water bill. Another one is a summer electric assistance program, so approximately 260 customers in 2024. This is also income qualified for city electric customers that eliminate the electric service charge during the summer. Another one is the Mesa Community Action Network. The city provides about $200,000 on annual support. This also includes assistance programs for utility payments. And then another one is what we just finished up was $20 million in electric utility assistance from the ARPA funding that we received from the federal government. So this provided to residents and commercial electric customers. What this helped out was the pass-through. So what was discussed downstairs is that there's a electric cost factor that is calculated. And really what it is the cost of the commodity that cost gets directly passed through to the customers. What this ARPA funding did was, during those last 2 years when the electric costs were increased significantly due to events in Texas and California, we were able to use that ARPA funding to be able to benchmark to SRP's rate because they were able to keep their low rate. So we were able to fund and benchmark it to SRP. The average customer over those 2 years for residential, the savings that ARPA helped was about $700. And the average commercial customer funding was about $3,200 over those 2 years with ARPA funding to be able to keep those rates low for them in comparison to SRP. Another one is the...
Mr. Summers?
Touch on what happened with SRP, because most of us in this room are in SRP, not City of Mesa. So how did SRP handle it? And
So Mayor, Councilmember Summers, the way SRP handled it is they are a much bigger electric company, so they were able to absorb that cost. However, they absorbed it and were able to, now they are, I want to say, paying the price because they were able to absorb it but go below and run at a negative for a little bit. But now what they are doing is now they are increasing their cost factor a little bit more than normal to be able to recoup those costs.
They deferred the cost and eventually are catching up with it.
okay, how many customers do they have? Do we know?
I don't know.
Mr. Freeman, can you help us?
I'd have to find out.
What's it?
Wait, can we get a helpline from Mr. Freeman?
1,050,000.
And Mesa has how many?
17?
About 17,000.
17,000. So it's the ability of the large corporate entity to be able to absorb those costs for a longer time than the City of Mesa, which would have been hit with only 17,000 customers.
That's correct. So the next utility assistance really is the water conservation. I'll just briefly go over this. This is the Zeroscape, grass to Zeroscape that the city offers. There is a website down below that you can go and apply and work with our environmental sustainability group that if you want to change from grass to Zeroscape, they can walk you through the process, and they're great to do that. So the next slide here is the utility fund forecast that with the proposed rates that are recommended would show. So the key here is the net sources and uses line. So the net sources and uses are negative going all the way out until about we get to 28, 29. So even with these proposed rates, the utility fund is still drawing down on the fund balance. That is a strategic plan that we've been doing with the projects, being able to fund these projects. However, then with these rates, we're able to make up that throughout the year. And as I mentioned before, we have smoothed the adjustments out of the rate adjustments to be able to get back to a positive net sources and uses. The other thing I wanted to point out was down about in the middle, the debt service transfer. This is those lines that I was previously showed you, is that with those projects, what we do is we take out a debt service bonds to be able to pay for those and then pay over a 20-year period for those. And what that increased is, so for instance, in fiscal year 23-24, the estimate was about $113 million. However, with all those projects, once we go out to 29-30, we're about $181 million of debt service that's putting pressure on this to be able to fund a lot of those projects, not just what we call the big three, but also other projects that are going on, water doing quarter sections and electric doing a few things, and so wastewater doing a bunch of projects. So that helps out with this.
Brian, I think we need to make that point one more time. So Mayor and Council, the net sources and uses beginning last 23-24 all the way through 27-28. So you have 5 years where the proposed rate, utility rate increase is still not sufficient to cover all the cost in that year for the utility fund. We saw this coming. We knew that the debt service, so we built up the reserves in order to absorb this. We've also planned to make sure that we were not creating, if we had to try to make up the $20 million in any 1 year, the rates would be significantly higher than we're proposing to you today. So we've tried to figure out a way to smooth those rates out over a longer period of time so the rate impact didn't happen in 1 year. You are seeing that in other communities where they've delayed the opportunity to make that decision. So instead, they're spiking their rates in 1 year of 20%. What we've tried to do is try a way to help manage the impact to our ratepayers by spreading that rate increase over a period of time, even though it's not sufficient each year for 5 years to cover all our costs. We built up the reserves enough to absorb it. And even though we are in a very difficult situation, 27-28 is an unacceptable financial position by the rating agencies for us to be below 10%. So we have some work to do, trying to cut costs, be more efficient. But this shows that the rates that are being proposed today, and even for the next 4 years, are still not sufficient to cover the current cost of the utility. We build up the reserves to absorb this, and what we're hoping is by the time we get to 27-28, we've been able to manage growth into the system and selling more of the utilities, getting more efficient where we can grow out of that net spend deficit, and then begin building the reserve back up again in the future. But this is a difficult position to be in, to come to you with a fund, a utility fund that is self-sufficient, did not rely upon any property taxes, sales taxes. It doesn't get any funding from the general fund, and yet we're spending more than we're receiving for at least 5 years. So that's where we talk about the smoothing and trying to get back on track.
So Mayor, Council, to the City Manager's point, this next slide just isolates 1 year, this current year that we're proposing rate adjustments. So the annualized revenue increase of these recommended rate adjustments is about $29.6 million. However, the operating costs of the utility fund over what we're projecting from fiscal year 24-25 to next fiscal year 25-26, we're looking at an increase of operating costs of $34.1 million. So that is just over about a $4 million loss. So revenues are less than the expenses. So, but that is part of that drawdown. And just to show on just 1 year that we are still drawing down on those fiscal years. And then here's just a quick schedule. Today, the introduction of the utility rate ordinances. On December 2nd, the City Council will take action on the utility adjustments. And then, if approved, the effective date will be February 1.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. We'll now proceed. We have many requests to speak from the audience tonight, so we'll now move to that. I'll note that I have, I think, currently 15 cards, but we received well over, a couple of thousand cards from people who wanted to express their opinion but did not ask to speak. So we will be going home sometime tonight. So we'll just start with these 15 cards, and each speaker, we invite you to come to the microphone. Please give us your name. We have your addresses on the card, and you have 3 minutes to speak. So we will begin with, and I apologize in advance for struggling with some of the pronunciations of your names. Mary Maybeno. Welcome, Mary. There'll be a clock, hopefully up on the screen, to help you budget your time.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Mary Maybeno, and I live in Mesa District 5, off Brown and Record Roads. Whether you were glad or sad, Trump won. Pundits agree that the economy was perhaps the main reason he won. The high cost of living people are grappling with is a real concern for residents living month to month who can barely make ends meet. Some are even on the verge of being homeless or being evicted. I know some of you voted yes to purchase the Grand Hotel because you felt compassion for the homeless. Please consider some compassion now for residents that will be so negatively affected by these rate hikes and that may not qualify for assistance programs. Now, I know Mayor Giles is a big proponent of the Trees Are Cool initiative, which wants 1 million trees planted by 2050. Now, I like trees too, but even 5-gallon desert-adapted trees require a certain amount of water to become established and have a deeper root system. When people see their utilities become much higher, will they want to plant trees? It isn't hard to go from one tier to the next tier when your tree needs watering. Now, about these smart utility meters the city of Mesa has unwisely mandated we all have. These smart meters emit radio frequency radiation, RFR, which is electromagnetic radiation. They communicate with other smart meters and the utility company to create a mesh, MESH, which increases the overall density of the RFR radiation indoors and throughout a neighborhood. They continuously emit MFR in multi-second blast that can be powerful. Animals such as bees, plants, people, especially children, are sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies, even at low levels. Cancer, headaches, memory, sleep problems are just a few adverse effects. Water smart meters allow your water to be a conduit for radiation into your home, and electrical smart meters allow your electricity to become a conduit. If you have the City of Mesa Electric, you get 2 smart meters. Even SRP is gracious enough to have an opt-out option for these smart meters, of which I have taken advantage of. The Federal Communication Commission does not regulate or offer guidelines, non-thermal guidelines, on the additive or exponential effects of EMF radiation coming from 5G towers, smart meters, and all other wireless technology. You're
out of time. If you could wrap it up, please.
Yes, I will wrap it up. Also, privacy concerns. They can be targeted by hackers to see if you're home or on vacation. I strongly urge a no vote on the tax heist, and I strongly urge an opt-out option for smart meters, too.
Thank you, Mary. I'm sorry, folks. Thank you. I know we've got some strong feelings here and we've got some enthusiasm, and Mary did a great job, and Mary deserved a round of applause. I agree with you, but we're not going to do applause tonight because we don't want to intimidate people. We want to make this a friendly atmosphere for everyone that's here to speak. All right? Next is John Wigton. Welcome, John. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is John Wigton, and the utility rate increases. I'm an engineer. I like looking at the numbers and justification, and until your few slides tonight, I haven't seen anything justifying your actions. You know, you haven't made available to us or even notified people through, say, notes on the bills that this is coming, and here's why, here's numbers that are verifiable. They need to be verifiable. The increase, notify us well in advance. Perhaps even in the bill, a link to where the data is so that we can examine it. Maybe it would make us more amenable to it. But right now, it looks like you guys, like the council just decided that they're going to do this, and that's it. You haven't looked for our buy-in. The city council is supposed to be a stewardship and should never appear to be rulers governing their domain and power. You should work for us. If you're going to take more of our money, do it in the light of day, not in the closed council chambers. I oppose taking money for this without suitable explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay. Folks, it's just gonna, please don't applaud. We understand, if you want to do jazz hands, something like that, but we don't want to, we've got a lot of folks to speak tonight. Alex Branke-Cheech. Welcome, Alex.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Giles, council members, and Mayor-elect Freeman. Congratulations on being our next mayor. I'm fairly new to Mesa. My family escaped California about 4 years ago to a much safer, cleaner, and lower cost Arizona, and now our new home, the city of Mesa. Before that, 39 years ago, my family escaped communism in Europe. I hope they're teaching you guys about communism. It makes you run away. I mention this because my life experience brings a certain level of concern for the direction that we are being led in. The proposed utility rate increases, which the city expects to generate about $30 million from your own estimates, in my opinion, should be reconsidered for several reasons. First and foremost, this will harm the lowest income households and retired citizens who are on a fixed income. As if the cost of living wasn't high enough, the proposed rates are not just under 6%, but depending on where someone lives and how much they use, the rates can be up to 30%. The city of Mesa has been outspending our two neighbors. I'm glad you mentioned Gilbert, but let's combine Chandler as well by $200 million. And Gilbert and Chandler combined, they have two of everything. They have two police chiefs. They have two police fire chiefs. And yes, they have two city managers. The city of Mesa last year reported over $12 million in surplus. We're still waiting to hear what this year's surplus is going to be, but let's just assume it's going to be similar-ish. In addition to the surplus, the city of Mesa just announced a $14.9 million, roughly $15 million, project to install 48 new vehicle charging stations. That's about $310,000 per charging station. Mayor Giles, you were appointed to the National Electric Vehicle Working Group. How is the city of Mesa going to pay for the $15 million that it's going to cost? How will they be maintained? And how will the cables be replaced once they're stolen by thieves that cut them and use them to recycle the precious metals? The surplus of $12 million and the $15 million charging stations gets us to about $27 million. If we're talking about $30 million measly increases in the utilities, I'm sure you can find some room within your expenditures to make some cuts. For example, the current maintenance program for the vehicles. By the way, they're all done by the computer system. It tells you to change the tires, change the oil whenever the computer says, not dependent on when the vehicle needs it. So if the vehicle hasn't even been driven, the computer says change the tires, they're brand new tires, you gotta change the tires. How about another way to reduce some spending? The furniture.
Alex, you're out of time. Could you wrap it up, please?
Yes, sir. The new administration, we're expecting utility costs and energy to go down. I urge you to reconsider, send this back for the number crunchers, and I ask you not to pass this forward, and I ask you to vote no on utility increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. I appreciate the jazz hands. Again, you're breaking the rules when you clap, and let's set a good example for the young people that are here of a civil meeting, shall we? Next, Linda Patrick Hayes. Next will be Kevin Medina. Kevin, you're not next. I'm sorry. We got, just so you can kind of queue up, we'll do Linda and then Kevin will follow Linda.
He's on deck.
Welcome, Linda.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Linda Patrick Hayes, District 2, and I'm so happy to have followed Alex, because I have to tell you that when I heard these following figures, I was stunned. That our two neighbors, Gilbert and Chandler, combined are larger than Mesa and manage with 25% fewer employees because they operate more efficiently. Gilbert and Chandler combined spend annually approximately $200 million less than Mesa on general governmental expenses. We know the average income in Mesa is approximately $55,000 a year. Please listen to your citizens. Give them a break in this high inflationary period of our lives. Vote no on the proposal. In fact, entertain the idea of cutting the utility rates and encourage the city manager to eliminate government waste. The city of Mesa has no revenue problems. It has a spending problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. Kevin, after Kevin, we'll have Mark Kimball.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, Mr. Brady. I'll take those for you. I have here a representative from our petition. It's an online petition. Each page is one person that has signed the petition, and I just wanted to give a visual, not necessarily for you, but anybody watching. That we have currently 2,000 people who have signed the petition. And if you want to go online and sign it, you can. I don't mind. I was hoping to start off this evening to kind of give an overview of what you were going to hear tonight. I've kind of brought this group together, kind of teaching them a little bit how to present to the council. Being in leadership myself with city in the past, now Maricopa County. And it's inspiring to see that they actually showed up, because I've been coming for the last 4 or 5 months, and as you know, it's hardly anybody in it. So it's kind of nice to see that. But the point that I want you to get is to listen to the residents. It was a great presentation that Brian gave, and I'd love to get that from you, Brian, later. But there's always the other side, and that's we have citizens that are hurting financially. The city shoots for that 20% reserve. Well, you know, a lot of residents won't have that in themselves. So please consider voting no on this as it's written. We want to offer also our assistance if anything we can help. It's not just complain. We want to help provide solutions. So please vote no. My name's Kevin Miedema, and I vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
I got to work on them.
Thank you. Kevin, would you mind taking those with you? Thank you.
Thank you.
Following Mr. Kimball, we'll hear from Logan Caverman.
Mr. Mayor, council members, before my comments, I wanted to welcome Mayor Giles back from the Democratic Convention. It's worth repeating the statistics that you've heard tonight regarding our neighboring cities. Think about what you heard. 2 of everything operating 200 million less budget, same size, maybe larger. 25% fewer employees. So I've learned some things tonight. Specifically the 30%, if I'm getting it right, that goes to the general fund out of the utilities. And the comment was made, well, the utilities aren't subsidized by the general fund. Well, the general fund is being subsidized by the utilities. It's, in a way, taxation without representation, to be fair. So maybe the answer is, how do we reduce the general fund and rethink the 30% loophole? An example of the danger of this loophole happened a few years ago. Not far from here is an ASU campus. You may remember that went up to a vote to City of Mesa residents. That vote was defeated, and yet, standing not far from us is a $60 million plus investment by the City of Mesa. How did that happen? It happened by an end around using the loophole in the utilities. I know it's a tough job, but I would encourage, there's got to be ways. Maybe we need an Elon Musk type thinker to come in and take a look at some of the things, how we can improve. And so I would encourage some new thinking and possibly, and I'm going to cut my comment short to leave for others, but there's got to be ways we can do better and rethink this, because everybody's feeling the crunch. It all adds up. I'm looking at my utility bill and I'm going, how is it more than twice my SRP bill? I like Councilman Summers, my kids are gone. We put artificial grass in the front yard. We got rid of one of the garbage cans. And yet I'm going, wow, Okay, I'm going to cut my shower now by 15 minutes. So anyways, I really encourage, we have the talent, but our citizens need to be listened to and represented fairly. And don't be the politicians that think they know better than the citizen, than the ones that vote them in office. I look forward, hopefully, new mayor. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Can you wrap it up,
Mayor-elect
please?
Freeman. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Logan Caverman, followed by David Winstanley. Welcome, Logan.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Logan Caverman. I'm from District 5. I'm here to address the proposed utility rate hike and its impact on my generation, Gen Z. My generation is already facing a high cost of living because we spend a larger percentage of our income on rent and housing than previous generations. This proposed tax increase will only add to the burden we are already facing. It's important to note that this is not the time to raise taxes, especially when people have been dealing with inflation and increased demand for necessities due to mass illegal immigration over the past 4 years. People, including my generation, are already struggling with rising rents, food prices, and medical costs because of the state of our economy. And this proposed utility increase will only exacerbate these struggles. Instead of increasing the burden on Mesa residents, focus on using the tax revenue you already have efficiently. Mesa already has one of the highest utility rates in the valley, as seen from, as people have discussed previously. And make sure this revenue is used efficiently instead of allowing these revenues to be used for other projects in the general fund. As you spoke about, there was that 30% going to the general fund. You represent us and should do what is in the best interest of all Mesa residents. Increasing taxes on people who are already struggling is a slap in the face to everyone here. Please consider the consequences of this proposal will have on young adults trying to find stability in our current economy. We need policies that help us, not hurt us. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, I'll say it again, we don't clap. So when you clap, you're breaking the rules. So please don't do that. David Winstanley, followed by Melanie Formisano.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, esteemed council members and city staff. My name is David Winstanley. I live in Southeast Mesa, near Eastmark, in Councilman Summers' district. Thank you for letting me speak. I recognize that tonight's vote on this subject is intended to be a simple move forward in order to have a public forum on December 5th. But that move forward includes specific recommendations, and I would like to request that several of those be reconsidered. The first is the risk reserve. I learned tonight that our credit rating is affected by that. I was going to say, as a former director of engineering at Honeywell Aerospace, we know how to do risk management, so do you. You can calculate what the risks are and calculate the amount. Why are we playing with that number? That seems like a risky thing to do, plus which we're incurring future costs on our credit rating for future borrowing. I'd like to ask you to reconsider that, especially since we're going below 10% in the last 3 years of the projected plan. The second thing I learned tonight was there's a 30% surcharge on our utilities to pay for the general operation of the city. I did not know that until tonight. So I'm going to change my remarks slightly. $10 million of the increase is the result of that 30%. You've done a percent on a percent. So anytime there's an increase, you get more money to do other things in the general area. And I would like to suggest that maybe you reconsider that 30% as a fixed rate. That's a budget discussion. That's not a utility rate discussion. So with those things, I would ask you to reconsider moving forward and ask the staff to reconsider the 2 items I've mentioned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. Next is Melanie Formisano, followed by Carrie Davis. Welcome, Melanie.
Hi. Hi, my name is Melanie Formisano, and I'm a concerned resident of Mesa. I'm speaking regarding the proposed increase in utility rates. I ask that you vote against this rate increase, as I believe it places an undue burden on Mesa's residents and lacks the transparency and fairness that we deserve. While I understand the city faces budget challenges, I feel that relying on utility rates to fill that gap is not the best approach. As we all know, Mesa does not have a primary property tax, and this absence has led to Mesa inflating utility rates to make up the difference. So to put things into perspective, a primary property tax would generate about $45 million to the annual budget. This year, the city transferred $126 million from the utility fund, and next year's proposal is to increase that amount to $136 million. That's more than 3 times what we would receive from a primary property tax. And it's being done in a way that hides the true costs from the residents. Utility rates should reflect the actual costs of providing services, not be used as a tool to balance the budget. When such a large portion of the utility fund is transferred to the general fund, Mesa is asking residents to cover costs that should be paid for through general taxes, not hidden in our utility bills. It feels less transparent and feels unfair to the people who are already facing increased cost of living. Mesa residents already significantly pay more for their utilities than other neighboring cities. A further rate increase will only add more strain to families who are already stretched thin. For many, it will become even harder to make ends meet and force many to choose between basic necessities like food, housing, healthcare, or their utility bills. Rather than relying on a utility rate increase to address the budget gaps, I ask you, please explore alternative solutions. Please revisit the budget. Identify and reduce wasteful spending. Focus on cost-saving measures to improve efficiency without placing additional burdens on residents. I also encourage you to consider an approach that maintains a more equitable and transparent system. If funds need to be transferred from the utility fund, I believe it would be more appropriate to limit those transfers to the amount equivalent to what we would have collected from a primary property tax. I hope and trust that you will consider the impact of this rate increase to Mesa's residents and make a decision that puts the well-being of our community first. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Carrie Davis, following Mr. Davis, we'll have Martin DeVold.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and congratulations to Mayor-elect Freeman. I oppose the utility rate increases for agenda items 7A and 7N. Residents are struggling to make ends meet with the inflationary pressures we have experienced over the past 4 years. The city's current year budget is $2.69 billion, $130 million more than the prior year. The city would only need to reduce spending by approximately 1% to absorb the anticipated additional utility costs to offset the proposed rate increases. For 2023, the city's general governmental activities reported approximately $12 million surplus, and business-type utilities reported $127 million surplus, yet transferred nearly $120 million to the general fund. It is projected that the city's 2024 annual comprehensive financial report will also report surpluses. With the election of more conservative government leaders, we can expect that energy prices will come down, and this will have a favorable cost reduction impact on the city's budget. The city manager is now in a position to revise the budget with estimated energy savings and reduce the utility transfer to the general fund. The combined population of our 2 neighboring cities, Gilbert and Chandler, is approximately 20,000 more than Mesa's. According to the 2023 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, Mesa has 21 fire stations. Gilbert and Chandler combined have 22 fire stations. Gilbert and Chandler together have about 1,800 paved street miles. Mesa has about 1,600 paved street miles. Gilbert and Chandler combined have approximately the same number of developed park acres as Mesa. Since 2001 through 2023, Gilbert and Chandler's combined general governmental activities reported revenues of $2,459 million. Mesa reported $2,533 million, a difference of only 3%. Yet, for the same period of time, Gilbert and Chandler's expenditures were $2,018 million. Mesa's were $2,635 million, $670 million or 30% more. Why does Mesa spend on average $200 million more annually than our 2 neighbors combined? I believe it's because Mesa is top-heavy and bloated. They operate with 25% fewer employees, yet they are larger than Mesa. We clearly voted to restore more conservative spending policies with the election of Mayor-elect Freeman and Rich Adams. It's time, as has been mentioned earlier, for the city to recognize it has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. I urge you to vote no on agenda items 7A and 7N. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Martin DeVold, followed by Curtis Strunk.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you. I'm going to defer. You've heard everything I would have to say, and I don't want to duplicate that. So Curtis Strunk is next.
Thank you. Mr. Strunk.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity. I serve as a pastor in the community, and our small church tries to do our very best to help those who are in need. And the number of those who are in need have skyrocketed over the recent years. One of those families, I'm going to call her by an alias. Her name, I'm going to call her Jamie. She's a mother of two, and her husband is dealing with incredible health complications that are not going to allow him to return to work. Jamie reached out to us a number of months ago for assistance, and we don't have an assistance program per se, but we just said we want to be a help if we can. So in attempting to help Jamie's family, we kept them in their home for a number of months by the grace of God. And this is happening with up to 20 families per year for us as a small church of 120. That is also just by the grace of God. We always want to give credit to Jesus. He is the author and perfecter of our faith, and he is the one who provides for us to be able to do these things. And so by faith, we've been practicing this for some time, and Jamie's family, having reached the end of the resources that they had and our inability to continue to keep them in their home, they ended up having to move away to where they have some family in Texas. But this is actually becoming a very common story for us. If 30% of what we pay goes to the general fund, as far as our utilities are concerned, then increasing the costs for citizens while increasing the city budget by $130 million is a great way to make the citizen more dependent on the government, in my opinion, and over the course of time. And this is also a creative way to tax-exempt entities as well. So because funds of those utilities are swept in, I would just add my voice to those around me who are asking for your grace in this matter and your care for your citizens. Thank you so much for considering a no vote against this.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, you're Curtis, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Curtis.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Next we'll hear from Savannah Williams, followed by Leslie Wilson.
Hello, Mayor John Giles and council city members. My name is Savannah, this is Bo, and I have been a citizen of Mesa for my entire life. In fact, I used to sit right behind me. I used to be on Mayor's Youth Committee. Just 6 years ago, I grew up here and would love to raise my children here. These proposals to raise utility rates are very disturbing to me. The fact that Mesa alone outspends Gilbert and Chandler combined by $200 million is absurd. Now, I'm no accountant, and I've only taken one financial class, but it seems to me that with that margin of spending, we could look into other budget options before we put the consequences of frivolous spending on the people. I'm not necessarily condemning this department for frivolous spending because of your presentation. It looks like you have thought this all through, but you are supported by the people and have a duty to serve the people. Not the government's wallet, not your fiscal supporters or other personal agendas. You are not a business. You are our representatives. And as the people you are representing, we are telling you that we do not want this. Inflation over the past 4 years has had a devastating effect on us all. For my family to function, my husband has to work full-time. And as a mother, which is already a full-time job, I have 2 part-time jobs. We don't qualify for government help, and we don't want it. What I want, is for you to please consider what this proposal would do to people like me and families like me if it moves forward. I'm only one of many people who will affect by this decision. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you vote no on this proposition.
Thank you, Savannah. Leslie Wilson, followed by Doreen Taylor.
Hi, my name is Leslie Wilson, and I'm a Mesa resident like the rest of us. I just wanted to, well, I'm going to cut it really short. Everyone else has done a beautiful job saying what I had planned on saying as well. But I also wanted to share from a realtor's perspective. I have the pleasure of working with renters, and it is heartbreaking to listen to many of their stories and the increases just in life that we're all bearing. It really comes down heavily on them as well. And with a utility increase, it's just one more addition that they're going to have to be concerned with. We have people who are obviously, they have roommates, strangers who are their roommates now, just to survive. I have friends who, as well as renters who have decided that they're gonna have to leave Mesa. They love Mesa very much, but they're gonna have to move because they can't afford to live in this valley anymore. So I represent my family, but not only that, I represent my sister's family who was not able to attend tonight because of the time of this meeting. And so for the two households, we oppose this increase, and we hope that you folks will vote no when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Doreen Taylor.
Thank you so much, councilmen and women, and congratulations, Mark. So I'm here to say no, please vote no, but I'm also here to remind you that you are our employees. We elected you as our leaders, and it is your duty and your stewardship responsibility to hear us tell you, as the vast majority of us already have, that we are not interested in a utility rate hike. We can see that you have done your jobs well, to a point, but now you're being forced with a decision that does not make sense to any of your citizens. I moved to Mesa in 2008. I have lived in this city since I moved here. I've never lived in another city. I like Mesa. I love Mesa. We have a lot of great attributes. But one thing I can tell you is that when the cost of living becomes unaffordable, the love for the city dies down. And therefore, the love for my elected leaders also dies down very quickly. I want to like the people that I have elected. I want to say I'm proud of the people I have elected. But to see them be fiscally irresponsible and put an undue burden on not only myself, but your other constituents that have all come here this evening to show support for their own voices, and for you actually, is an embarrassment to this city. I don't want to be embarrassed by my own city. So I have a couple things that I looked up. I'm very confused about why we are being asked to pay an increase in our utilities when, if Mesa is expanding at the rate at which we believe it is, and we have new homes going up far, far east in the valley, we have new developments over by Mesa Gateway, we have the Cannon Beach Park that is supposed to be developed here that's going to use an enormous amount of water, by the way. There should be a lot of property taxes and sales taxes that you're also going to see an increase in. Why are those funds not helping to pay for these municipalities and parks and streets and sidewalks? And why on earth did we see the municipalities being funded twice by the overflow from our utility fund into our general fund? I saw no difference between the police and the firefighters. One amount showing for them, a secondary amount showing for them. I love supporting my municipalities, but I don't believe that I should have to pay an increase in my city water in order to cover that, especially when there are two other cities next door to us that spend $200 million less. Listen, you guys, if you cannot handle the projects under the budget that you currently have, then stop building. Slow down, be conservative as we have called you to be. I want to be able to re-elect people in good conscience, and I cannot do that if you do not show me that you have a good faith for the citizens who have elected you. And Mrs. Spilsbury, I am in your district. And I would really appreciate it if you would stop telling your neighbors to take down their Trump signs. And if you would please consider that you say you are a Republican, and yet you walk by my house and you look at my signs and you move to the other side of the street. That is so interesting to me. I had good faith in you, but I have unfortunately lost that, so I will not be
Ms. Taylor,
asking
you're out
you
of
in the
time,
future.
and you're also off the topic. But
Yeah,
you're out of time.
thank
Can
you.
Please wrap it up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here tonight. Mr. Brady, we'll now open it up. I think it'd be appropriate to have some response from city staff. First of all, let me just preface it by saying, again, thank you for being here. I think this is a great example of democracy, and we appreciate you being here and sharing your thoughts with us. So, this is not open mic night, folks. Thank you, but we're done hearing from the public. Is there anybody else here that would like to speak? All right. All right, sir, then come up and fill out a card, please. Oh, I'm sorry. What's your name?
My name is Don Adams.
Come on up, Don. I did not get your card. You have 3 minutes, Don.
Thank you. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. Such is the patient sufferance of the residents of Mesa, Arizona. And such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present mayor of Mesa, Arizona is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over the residents of Mesa, Arizona. To prove this, let facts be admitted to a candid world, for nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad. You get to leave the legacy of having the most corrupt city in Maricopa County, Arizona. And Maricopa County gets the elite legacy of being the most corrupt county when it comes to election fraud in the United States of America. And I remember when I bought my house, I live in a county island. And all I got to do is pay your little stupid tax for my water because I got Southwest Gas. But I remember in 2003 when I bought my house, I paid about $10 a month for water for the city of Mesa. And now I pay about $45 a month. That's about a 450% increase in 21 years. Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir, can I get your name one more time just so I make sure I have your card?
Don Adams.
Don Adams. Okay, Don, I had you were under the next agenda item, so I apologize. That's where we had you. All right, so again, thank you for being here tonight. Just to remind you what the process is tonight, we're voting on setting a public hearing and a vote on the rate increases, and that would be 2 weeks from tonight. So invite you back, assuming that the vote goes to continue this discussion. There were some great questions that were raised tonight, and I'd like city staff to respond to some of them. Mr. Brady, I saw you taking some notes. Anything you'd like to share?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, and thanks everyone for showing up. I appreciate the opportunity to be informed about facts. We've been in this dialogue with council for several months, so you can certainly go on our website. You can find all the information, all the presentations that we've given to council for the last 6 months. Hopefully, I think that'll provide you some details about how the rates are developed, the process we go through in identifying all the budgets and what's included in the budgets. I mean, you can get into the details if you look in those presentations. Each of the departments made presentations to the council back in the spring about what was happening in their area, whether it was on the operational costs with chemicals, commodities. We have to pay utilities too. When SRP increases their electric rate, we have to pay for that. When water goes up from the Colorado Colorado Authority, we have to pay for that. When they start cutting back our water, our rates go up significantly. And because it's a utility, it's an enterprise fund. I know there's been a lot of conversation trying to mix the two between our tax-supported fund and our rate-supported fund. They are separately, they are enterprise separately. Legally, they're separated, and even how they are financed are separately. Rates are driven by users. So we try to be very careful not to mix the two. One of the things unique about Mesa in 1945, you heard this is not a new formula, a new template. Certainly for me, having been in the profession for over 30 years, Mesa does have a unique approach to financing its local government. But it's been that way since 1945. 1945, the city eliminated the primary property tax and instead came up with this theory that a broader base of user rates across the utility was a more equitable way to fund the city's general fund. And so that from that time forward, there's always been a contribution from the utilities, and back then it was an electric utility, to help support a portion of the general fund. The council most recently has passed an ordinance establishing the strict use of those funds. And as you heard today, the majority of those funds go to fund public safety. And one of the things I will say, you can bring up Gilbert, Chandler, Scottsdale, Phoenix, and I'll put on my police and fire department up against every one of those from a response and professionalism. You are getting premium public safety services. And if you've ever had to call them, you know that. The utility fund allows for us to collect that revenue to support public safety from everyone, whether you're a property taxpayer or you're a business or you're a educational facility, you all pay into that because everyone benefits from public safety. We did give you a chart that showed that on the annual average cost comparison, Mesa falls at the just below, kind of right in the middle, or average, right? What it costs an average homeowner to pay for all those bills, whether it's your property tax, what you pay in sales tax, what you pay, and we use that. That is kind of our test to make sure we're being reasonable. We're very sensitive to make sure we're not overburdening our community. Whether it's, and we look at all those basket of goods, and right now today, even with these proposed rates, we're right in the middle. So we consider that pretty good. That's a pretty reasonable rate. When you compare us with other communities, I'd ask you, one, to consider the quality of our public safety and the fact that Mesa is unique. We have 2 commercial airports that we support. We have an electric utility. We have a gas utility. So that makes us unique. The other thing that makes us unique, and we just briefed the council about this, we receive $105 million from the federal government to invest in Mesa. Those other communities didn't get that amount of money. But that all adds up into why when you look at those comparisons and the total budget numbers, Mesa's a very big city. We're one of the largest cities in the country. We do get several entitlements from the federal government to support a lot of our projects that go to those most in need. That's different than some of those communities you're comparing us to. So there's a lot of things we could look at, but I will say that big difference is if you want to compare, go compare public safety. Go compare response times. Go compare the quality of service you get in Mesa on public safety. And that is where we've designated the funds, just like they did in 1945, today to support public safety. It does come from the utilities. And we're able to do that. And as you can see, the average homeowner still pays is right in the middle of all the comparison cities. So it's not a premium. You're not paying a lot more than anybody else. You're paying a little bit more than some, but you're paying a lot less than others. So we're trying to hit that middle. That's kind of where Mesa is. We're trying to hit right down the middle of making sure we're being reasonable. And I think we've been able to do that. And Mayor and Council, if there's any other specific questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for council discussion, but before I do that, I just want to point out that I don't need to tell everyone in this room that inflation is a very real thing. We all experience it every time we walk into the grocery store or put gas in our cars. That is a reality that is being experienced across our country and across our state. And another stark reality is that the price of water is going up tremendously in the state of Arizona. There's cutbacks. The wholesale price of water is going up dramatically. So I understand the frustration that we all feel with seeing price increases. I would just, again, repeat something that you've heard several times tonight. This proposed water rate increase of less than 5% in Mesa is dramatically less than you've seen in every other community. Cities around the valley are increasing water 25%, talking about increasing wastewater charges 95%. We're not doing anything remotely like that in the city of Mesa. So if you're upset about the increasing price of water, I'm with you. But if you want to vent those feelings, probably every other city council in the state would be a more appropriate place to do that, because the increases are less than you're seeing in other cities. And I think the reason that you're here tonight is because, in large part, you've received some incorrect information. We have been trying, the staff presentation that you saw at the beginning of the meeting, I would encourage you to please take a look at that. And we'll take the questions that were raised tonight and we'll discuss them again next week. But if you're going to be upset about real facts, okay? Don't let someone tell you something. No, you're not. You got to listen. You got to listen and learn, and then let's come and talk about it, okay? So, having said that, we have a model for financing the city of Mesa that is somewhat unique. It goes back to 1945. Back then, the city was making a lot of money when it came to sales tax and property tax, and the city fathers said, you know what, we don't need this much to operate our city. We're going to cancel our city property tax, and we're going to double down on utilities. If someone's going to make money on the sale of utilities in our city, we want it to be a modest write-up that's going to be applied and go back into the city coffers. And that's the model that we have followed. It's a rather unique model, but that's the model that we have followed since 1945. That's why the city of Mesa is heavily involved in utilities. That's why when you compare the city of Mesa's budget to cities like Tempe and Gilbert and Chandler, who are not in the utility business to the same extent that we are financing hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure so that we can be in that utility business and provide those services so that this model works. It's not an apples to oranges comparison. So that's something that, again, I'm encouraging you to take a look at. I'm going to open up open it up to the rest of the council. And again, I would encourage you to continue to ask great questions, and we've got answers for you. But I would ask you that when you hear something, please, apply that to what you've been told, because a lot of the things that you've been told are incorrect. All right? Thank you. Council, do we have discussion on this item? All right, again, the vote that we're making tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is to set a hearing to come back in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tonight, and that's when we will have a vote on the merits of the proposal. We'll take the questions that have been raised here, and we'll flesh those out. I think that there are a lot of charts were shared with you. Ma'am, we're not taking additional comments. Thank you, though. A lot of the questions have been, we tried to put some information out, but there's more information that we're going to put out. The cost of living in the city of Mesa at our next meeting, I think we're going to, the amount of money that Mesa contributes to government as compared to what citizens of other communities, we're going to share that with you, and I think you're going to be very favorably impressed. The amount of spending that the city of Mesa makes on government services compared to other cities, I think that's, again, what goes to the heart of the concerns that you're bringing to us. But again, you have to be a little careful. There's not an apples to apples comparison, because the city of Mesa has a different model. It is our model to say we're going to use utilities to help subsidize city services. Now, if you don't like that model, and I understand it, if you don't like that model, the answer is not to come to the city of Mesa and say, we don't want you to raise utilities, because that's denying the reality of math. That's denying that when water and chemicals and all of the expenses associated with utilities are going up, then we're going to lose more money. So if you're upset by that, the answer to that predicament is to walk into the city clerk's office and file an initiative to initiate a property tax in the city of Mesa or a tax on food tax. If you want to have a serious conversation about this, then you can't just say that because if you don't do that, what your proposal is, you're saying, I want to dramatically cut spending on public safety in the city of Mesa. So that's what you're asking us to do. All right? All right, we will now, is there any additional council discussion? If not, I'll call for the question. Is there a motion to proceed?
Mayor, I think we all should make a comment.
Okay, yes, I'd welcome that.
I'll go since
all right.
I take
Councilmember Duff.
And I appreciate that, that you give me this moment. We've listened. We're listening to you, and we also want to convey what we have been studying and going through and contemplating. So appreciate the two-way
Please be
listening,
respectful
that we
and let her
can
talk,
have
okay? I'm
a
sorry.
respectful dialogue and be respectful to one another. So we have been going through presentations. You can find them on the website since September on this specific thing of utility rates. There's multiple presentations, and you can find it on YouTube. You can find it on our social, and there's utility rate increases comparisons on the website. There's a massive amount of information that has been provided, and we have gone through. And if you need any of the links to that, if you want to know where, if you want a deeper dive on that, we are available to. A couple of things on this comparison of other cities, like the city manager mentioned, we have 2 airports, and we do have utilities, so yes, we have more employees. Regarding the additional expenditures in our budget, we did receive $105 million. There's just a presentation at study session just before we came here. Out of $105 million, we've also received numerous grants, including the grant for EV, which was the grant for the electric vehicle charging was a grant to pay for that. So all the grants and federal monies that we have received to pay for the homeless hotel, the AMI project, are from grants that have very specific criteria and how we can use them. And we have applied them to help our city in the long term. And that process has been ongoing since COVID. We have been I've been on council almost 6 years, and all except 1 year, we have been taking these incremental increases, 3 to 5% on our utilities. It is the fact of inflation and the cost of everything. I'm sure if you look at so many of your bills, I know rents have gone up like 40%. The cost of housing, the cost of eggs, the cost of gas is just remarkable. It's just unbelievable, the inflation that has occurred. And I wish we could be irresponsible and continue to overspend our utility fund. As you can see, we're dipping into our reserve fund, our savings, just trying to smooth this out. But we can't dip below a certain amount. At 20% ensures a good bond rating for the work that we do, that we can not pay more interest than we need to. 10% is a minimum that we have in the city that we would like to see. If you look at the long-term, we're getting below that. So I know we want to be fiscally responsible, but going below to increase, to keep on using our savings to pay for our costs it doesn't work either. The cost of all the chemicals have doubled. The cost of construction has doubled. The cost of so many things that we have in our utilities has doubled. We're asking for a rate increase for the average for water, solid waste, and wastewater is $5 a month. $5 a month is what this is about. Considering the cost of an inflation of everything that's going on, it's pretty reasonable. Our costs are through the roof, and we're trying to be as responsible as possible to smooth that out, not to have any radical increases like I've seen some of our neighboring cities. Gilbert has 50% in the last 2 years. Phoenix, 26%. Tempe, 15%. Peoria, 9%. APS increased their rates this year, 8%. SRP increased their rates last year, 8%, and this year's be 3%. It goes on and on. For us to have the 3 to 6%, depending where you look, $5 a month, this is just a reflection of what is going on. We're not exempt from the inflation costs, and we're doing our best because we have chose this model of having a utility business, a business in which we take the monies from our business and pay primarily for our public safety. Now, we could get rid of our utility business. We could just let but then you will be paying comparable rates, and we will have to have something that the profit will then go to these providers. It won't go to us. And we will have to have a primary property tax or some sales. We have to, if you don't want to do that, let's talk about how safe of a city you want to have. How many police officers do you want to reduce? When 2/3 of our budget is public safety, think about how safe of a city do we want to live in? So anyway, I talked longer than I expected. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Councilmember Duff. Council, any additional discussion?
Mayor, I want to make a
Mr. Freeman.
comment here. And I want to thank everybody for being here. This is so important. You know, it really pains us to even have a utility rate increase. And I remember several years ago that we absorbed a utility rate increase as a council. And that really set us back in the time when I think, Mr. Brady, you can comment on that, but it did give us, set us back a little bit on our reserve funds, and we had to make it up over the next couple of years.
Yeah, we had to come back with 7.5% increases.
Yeah, and we came back with a larger increase the following year because of absorbing this utility rate increase. And we could do that today if that's the council wishes, we could do that. But I think in the future, just listening to it, and you've seen the forecast, and I'm sorry you didn't get the information that you needed to help, we've had a productive discussion. I mean, this is one of the best turnouts I've ever seen at a council meeting, and it doesn't have to take utility rate increases to have you here. And we want you here because we represent you, and it's so important. So the thing that I always have done is I've always voted in favor of moving this forward for public input. And I've done that consistently throughout my term as a council member. And I find that very important that everyone have a continued discussion about this so we can fine tune. Maybe we found some things that we can do better based on your input, and we hope that I hope that that's the case, because what I really pushed back was on the 5.5% increase that was originally suggested to residential users. You got to remember, 66% of our water users are residential. They're you and I. And so it was at a 5.5%. I know we brought it down to 4%, which doesn't sound like a lot. But overall, it does mean that the commercial industrial users use the, 89% of our water, and the residential users use the other 11%. So in contrast, I just want you to know that I listen to you and I continue to take your input, and I think it's so important. I think that one of the things about moving the money from the utility fund over to the general fund, there's angst in that, and I understand that. But it takes those monies now to pay for our public safety personnel. As a retired Mesa firefighter, we've got a retired Phoenix firefighter over here, which he doesn't count for a whole lot, but no, we like Scott, even though he worked for Phoenix Fire. We have choices out there, and we want to listen to you. And I've been doing that. I don't want to bring politics in here, but I've listened to you for the last year and a half, and I understand the angst out there. And the utilities, the inflationary costs out there are really great. And so we can either spend monies out of a reserve fund and bring it down even further. That affects the bonds that we sent in the future that we go to sell. So it's got this ripple effect in there. And so I just want to explain to you why I do move this forward and understand. And so I appreciate you. So December 2nd, I think, is when our next council date, when we will be listening to you some more, and then we will vote at that time. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Summers?
Thank you. So first of all, folks, thanks again. I'm going to give you some numbers, and then if you would like to see the numbers I have for you, I would like you to email me at District 6. I have a letter that puts a lot of this stuff together, and a few of you have received it, but not everybody. And then I got your question, ma'am, so I'm going to address that a little bit for you. Or were you just stretching? No, the mayor shut down that, but I do have your question, so let me take care. I'll take care of it. Okay.
No,
So-
you're not being invited up to speak. I hope that.
No, I thought she was leaving.
It looks, oh, I'm sorry. If you were walking up to the microphone, I wanted to know we're done with public comment. Oh, no, I was just. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
I got it. I have your question, so let me take care of that. And then I'm gonna, after I give you some of these things. Well, it's gonna come at the end, I'm sorry, but then I'm gonna have some questions for staff that I would like to have answered on the second. Okay, because we're gonna have this one more time. So some of the numbers you've heard with our utility costs, and none of this should really come as a surprise. But when eggs have gone from 99 cents for a dozen to $3 or more a dozen, it's not a surprise that costs have gone up. Because every time my wife comes home from shopping, and she loves couponing, she just goes crazy about, how much this box of candy costs for frickin' Halloween. And it's just been absolutely incredible. The cost of housing has gone up a lot because of the cost of commodities. And let me give you some of these numbers just so you know that what we're facing. So since fiscal year 1920, so that's the year we all went nuts and shut the whole dang world down for COVID. 1920 fiscal year 1920. So how much of 2020?
2019 to 2020 is what he's saying.
2019 to 2020.
2019 to 2020.
Sorry. Retired firefighter. What can I tell you? So just to be clear, fiscal year 2019 to 2020. Sorry about that. So fleet maintenance costs, so just the cost to maintain your vehicle, our vehicles is up 41.2%. Part of that because, remember the pictures of all those vehicles in China because they didn't have any parts? We couldn't get cars. We couldn't get trucks. We're still very short on garbage trucks because we were waiting on computer chips to come out. Because we couldn't get any of these parts. And all of us felt that anybody that tried to buy a vehicle at that time was feeling the same thing. So the fleet maintenance has gone up because now our aging fleet has to be maintained with new parts. 63% increase in our landfill and recycling costs, 75.6 just to buy water, which shouldn't be a surprise with the CAP reductions in water. That just is a commodity. Water treatment chemicals, who owns a pool? Have you ever did you try to get chlorine in the last year? It's a pain, isn't it? 106.4%. So basically the same chlorine and chemicals that everybody that owns a pool is trying to get, all that is, not only are we dealing with the scarcity, but that's how much that went up. So we're facing some real inflationary pressures, but it's not just that. It's just, let me give you a couple numbers here, just year over year. So last year compared to this year, what have some of those numbers been? They still continue to climb. Landfill cost up 50.5%. Every time we collect your garbage, we have to bring it somewhere to dump it. Those folks, there's only so many places you can go. They've increased the cost over 50% just in the last year. The purchase of water as a commodity is up 15.1%, and chemicals are still up 22%. So that's the cost pressure. That's what we're dealing with a cost. And we can have a discussion later about how we might be able to address that. But these are real. Because you're feeling the same thing that we're feeling, and it's going up more than the price of eggs. It's going up fairly considerably. But we've done a lot of things to try to reduce the cost. Mayor-elect Freeman, can we say that unofficially official? Helped reduce from, instead of 5.5%, we reduced the base rate to 4%. We're starting to take a look at who uses the water, because this is mostly about water and even sewer, right? So in my district, those who came from my district, there's a lot of industrial growth going on down in the south, and the concern is, well, who's paying for that? Because the pipe in my street to my fire hydrant and to my house is only about yay big, but the pipe that has to go to large water users, feet wide. I don't want to pay for that. You shouldn't have to pay for that. We need to think about how it impacts the community, right? What impacts are you having on the system? Sorry, I do get winded, I know. So it's been a very long meeting. I will try to cut it short, so I apologize. But what we're starting to do now is try to transfer those costs, so the more you use, the more you pay. The bigger the requirement for the infrastructure because of the type of industry, we're not going to put that on the taxpayer anymore. We should pay our fair share, so should industry. So we've made some of those changes as well. We've done a number of other things too. But what we're talking about today ultimately is how we finance this city. And what kind of city do you want to be? And we talk about this considerably. We just had an election. 2 bonds and 2 other questions on top of that. It passed. For the past 24 years, all the way back to 2000, bonds have passed except for one. And that was anybody from Red Mountain, you'll remember the soccer fields up there. The voters said, we do not want the city to be in the business of running soccer fields as a business. And so those don't get built. But police stations, fire stations, this community as a whole has increased the sales tax 0.25% specifically for police and fire. Another small percentage, I think 0.3 cents sound right, for road maintenance because roads are important. That's what we see. And a little bit for quality of life. The pools and the parks that we have been approving over the years. The question is, how do we maintain those and operate those? It's one thing to build it, it's a whole other thing to operate it. So how we finance a city is important, and this is not the first time we've had this exact conversation. As a matter of fact, in 2005, there was a Financing the Future Committee, you can get this at the library, that went through how the city was financed and what the shortages were. And you know what it said? This is pretty interesting, that there's a decline in sales tax revenue. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, who's the lady? She might have left, but the lady that stood up and said, why aren't we having sales tax? Do you know that Mesa is dead dang last per capita for sales tax revenue? We don't shop here anymore. There's nowhere to go. No, it's all warehouses, yeah. We've not focused to this point. We have not focused on a retail initiative until just recently, which is going to take a long time. Look at Scottsdale. We talk about Chandler-Gilbert costs. Scottsdale is a city half our size, has about 18, 19 fire stations, fewer fire stations than we do. And when you look at the costs in that community, they're comparable. But they spend so much more per capita in their general fund budget than the city of Mesa does. Why? They're retail. It's hotels, it's retail, it's money, it's free money coming in from all over the world because people want to visit there. We need an economic development strategy. You talk about how can we finance a city better? We need an economic development strategy moving forward that focuses on those things, because if we can bring other people's money to this community, then that's less that has to come out of our pocket for some of this spending. We need to hire somebody, yeah. It talks about here, you know, there are several other issues that were brought up that are kind of in here. The fact that the use of utility revenue funds, you know, there's a belief that it lacks sufficient transparency. Am I right? That's kind of the concern. Yes. Because unlike when you look at the numbers that are on our account, you could say primary property tax 0. This is your sales tax. This is what you're paying in secondary tax, sales tax. All those are listed. But as we discussed earlier, one of the concerns is that, well, how much exactly is going to the general fund and why? Some of that was cleared up a little bit in past council that said 30% is all it's going to be. And you saw in the presentation today where that money goes and how much. So one of my questions to staff, or one of my directions to staff, is I would like us to see that number again so that you know where this transfer is going to, because I think we need to be absolutely clear on that. Pardon me as I go through my notes. So let's get to just some questions, because I know everybody, it's been a long day, and I appreciate most of us hanging in there. And for the ones who had to go, I understand. So there's been a lot of concern about what are we doing for the folks who can least afford this. And bless everybody's heart for bringing that up. I mean, one of the things, by the way, one of the things all of us can do on our bill, there's a little checkbox. I think it's $5. So if you have the means, you could check this box. It goes to Mesa Can. And that $5 is used for those folks who can't afford the utilities. But I would like staff to review on the second what we are doing to help folks that are most in need. Again, what does the 25% transfer go to? We talk about that in the presentation, but I want to add a question, because I think I've heard it here and I've read it in some of the online comments. Can we not transfer the 25% on this increase and put that back into utilities? And specifically, can we maybe put it into keeping our reserve up? Because I've heard concerns about what that reserve is going to be. So the question would be, again, for the second, can we not transfer that? Now, there's a cost to that, right? And that cost is, this is a public safety transfer. But maybe sending it back into the utilities might be more palatable. There were some questions that came in that said, can we just not raise the utility this year? Right? It's a 0%, and I've heard it a couple of times. So my question would be, what would 0% increase in utility rates this year look like using the existing forecast for spending? What is that going to look like for both the need for rate adjustments going forward and the general, the reserve balance? So if we could maybe get some slides put together on that. Jim, there's a really quick question. Jim, maybe you can answer now. We're gonna vote to move this forward. Can we still make changes to it if we decide to? We can't go higher. Can we go lower? Would we have to reintroduce that? What would we do?
Mayor and council member, we'd have to reintroduce on that particular item. But I mean, there's obviously a number of rates here, and if we're talking just water, we would have to pull that item, and then we'd have to reintroduce that one item, but you can move forward on the other ones.
Okay, so we would just have to reintroduce, and then that would be picked up at the next meeting, the next council meeting, which is,
well,
right.
Well, if it was lower, it wouldn't be subject to the 60 days. That's what the, but we're also just running out of council meetings, but we could set a special council meeting for.
Okay, so there's options. There's options.
Yeah.
There was a comment that a 1% budget reduction would cover the cost of the increase. Could we look at that and see what that, if that's accurate or if that's off? It was one of the comments that came in kind of about 2/3 of the way through. And then finally, the poor lady left. She had a comment and a question, and it talked about, can you find other creative ways to, save some costs? And there was a question in here that went back to, I thought it was pretty good, and forgive me, I'm going to try to find it quickly. So this one said kind of the same thing. This was an online comment that we received. So this one said they wanted to find creative ways, and their idea was bringing more green energy to the city, installing solar panels, city-owned buildings. Yeah, I know. Resistant. So, well, they tie together, all right? So I guess my question is going to be, what creative ways have we found to try to keep our utility rates low, and our costs low. And I know just from a general fund perspective, we've done a lot of creativity and that's really been stymied. One of my favorite programs, speaking of the fire department, is a public-private partnership. We did Mountain Vista Medical Center, where we had community paramedics who would go out into the field. They'd be proactive. It was cheaper to respond. And it was a cost recovery because we were working with Medicare to be able to recover the cost of that. I mean, imagine that. Not having to send a fire truck on something, on a medical call, and being proactive and engaged in the community, and then they shut that program down. They wouldn't pay for it anymore. So we're back to the old model that's inefficient and ineffective, which is sending a truck, sending an ambulance, picking them up, putting them in the ambulance, send them to the hospital, because the only way we get money is if we take them to the hospital in an ambulance. And the only way the hospital gets money is if they come into the emergency room, and that is the most inefficient and most costly way of accessing healthcare. And it's a shame to see programs like that break down, but we have done some innovative programs, and I think you need to hear what some of the latest ones are to know what it is that we're working on. And then the last question is this. We've heard a lot of the combinations of Chandler and Gilbert and what that city looks like. And I would like to see what those numbers actually look like when you start combining those two cities. And I know that's going to take a little work from our budget department. But I've done some back of the napkin, and yeah, it would be cheaper, but I don't think it's quite as inexpensive as I think people think. So I'm done speaking.
All right. Ms. Goforth.
Yeah, I think most of everything has been said on both ends. I appreciate everyone showing up tonight. Your feedback and input is obviously critical. And tonight, let's just remember, I know we've been asked not to vote to move this forward, but tonight's vote is simply an introduction. It is not a final vote on the utility rate adjustments. It's just a vote on whether we want to move forward and vote in 2 weeks. I guess I would say we can all agree on the fact that, and I'm going to keep this very brief, but that costs have gone up. I mean, we're talking about the cost, we're justifying the cost. I guess the question is, how do we handle it? And what we're hearing from you is cut cost. And I think what you didn't hear tonight is that we have done some of that, because we asked the same question, and we have deferred several projects that were on the table to be done in the next several years because of cost. So that is one measure that we did take that you didn't hear tonight, that we are trying to do to reduce that cost, to reduce that future burden. I happen to think that our financial philosophy of smooth and incremental increases to cover inflationary pressures as well as growth is financially prudent. And it allows our ratepayers to predictably budget their households. So in the last 5 years, we've done 2%, we've done 0%, we've done 1.5%, 2.5%, 2.75%, 3%, and now 4%. And actually, I have posted this on my social media. I know not everybody follows it. I posted our 3% last year. I didn't get one phone call about it, not one phone call last year at 3%. So and I'm a bit confused by that, I guess I would say, and would love to have conversations offline from tonight as to why I didn't get any feedback last year, and we've gotten a lot of feedback this year. Anyway, the issue is how to handle the cost increase. We're not going to argue that there are increases. There are, but how are we going to handle it? At the city, we've decided that smooth incremental increases are the way to handle cost increases due to growth and inflation. We're still growing. We have to forecast for that growth. We have to, we don't operate in a vacuum. As we've all said, we've mentioned it 10 times up here, all the price increases that affect you also affect us as a city. So tonight, we're just voting to put it forward. This is not the final vote, but I will be supporting to put it forward to vote in 2 weeks. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any additional council comment? All right, we have a motion for approval by Councilmember Duff, seconded by Vice Mayor Heredia. Please vote. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. So December the 2nd, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll reconvene, and this item will be on the agenda for a vote on the merits. Thank you for being here. Next item on our agenda is items from citizens present. Item 9. We had 3 cards. One of the gentlemen already came up, so we have 2 cards left. It's Alex Banky Cheech. He's gone. Okay. No, he's not. All right. Is that you, sir? It is. Please step up to the microphone. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Giles, council members, Mayor-elect Freeman. Very challenging, very difficult. It seems like a us against you guys. Me personally don't want it to be contentious like this because we all have to live here. We have to make this work somehow. I don't want to be seen personally as an adversary because now that I live here, this is home. I'm hoping to be more involved. This is why we didn't communicate. Oh, I'm in District 5. This is why we didn't communicate last year. The longer we live here, the more we learn about the city of Mesa. Mayor, as you're heading out, one thing that I would hope that you would leave a good legacy behind. And for those of you that aren't up for re-election in 2 years, please consider how you're going to be exiting. For those of you that are up for election in 2 years, also please consider the temperature of the community. Not to have a primary would be nice. Out here, we're having to manage our finances in a certain way that if things are too expensive, we have to make cuts. These numbers were great. The presentation's fantastic. May I come back and give you my presentation? It might look a little bit differently. The reason why I say that is, yes, there's one side that's presenting and the other is countering. We've been accused of having misinformation. The numbers are coming from the city's budget. These are your numbers that people have used here. We're not dumb, and we're not trying to come across as just bullies. We want you to know that we do care. We have looked at the numbers. Please, please consider looking a little bit inward. Try to be a little bit creative, because for us with families, we also have to consider finances and making sure that our numbers line up. We just ask as representatives that you do the same with the platforms that you have and the responsibilities that you have for the community. We don't like being in debt. We don't like paying for somebody that caused us to be in debt. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Michael Payron.
Hello and good evening, City Mayor, City Councils, Mayor-elect. My name is Michael Perrin. I work for Green Farms Dispensaries located north of Power and Highway 60 in District 6. I'm speaking today in regards to Ordinance 5601 passed by the City Council in 2020. And I'm here to urge the City Council and staff to create a text amendment for reasons I'll quickly explain. Ordinance 5601 created Chapter 26 named Marijuana Prohibition in the City Mesa Code under Title VI Police Regulations, as well as modified the existing marijuana zoning ordinance under Title 11, Chapter 31, subsection 34 of the marijuana facilities. Excuse me, guys. And a crazy meeting so far. I'm happy that this isn't about the same topic, but it might actually help a little bit. This kind of might help with your guys' revenues. The whole point of the conversation is originally in 2018, a text amendment passed with the city council in this chamber. I believe it was the mayor. I recognize a couple faces. I was there at that council member. That allowed for medical marijuana deliveries to happen in the city because other cities are going to deliver into the city. And like you guys mentioned, lower your guys' retail revenues. You're gonna miss out on taxes as well as the marijuana excise tax, which adds to your guys' county revenues, the community colleges, police, as well as schools. This prohibition in 2018 was removed when it was just simply asked, why would the city operators not be allowed to deliver as well? The staff recommendation in 2018 was 6-0, and again, the city council did adopt that. Yet in 2020, the marijuana prohibition in Ordinance 56 was created and passed. I was at that meeting and spoke against it as well for the exact same reason of delivery revenues. I've reached out to my city council member in District 6 as well as the city manager. I've not yet received a response from either. I do know now why you've been so busy, so it's okay. I reached out as well to planning and zoning and spoke with them, but they did reiterate the only way a text amendment can happen in the city of Mesa is through city council or through staff. I myself have helped with the Coconino County text amendment for the zoning. I increased the hours of operation from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., matching the city Flagstaff zoning ordinance. That as well was a unanimous one. I know that it's not a topic on the agenda, so you guys can't really ask me too many questions, but I am happy to answer any that you may have. Come back when this is on the agenda or assist with staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That concludes, Mr. Summers.
When did you send all I want to know is when did you send the email?
I want to say it was last Thursday or 2 Thursdays ago.
I was out of town, so I'll get back to you.
Staff had already reached out to P&Z and come down asking questions from your
I
office.
just wanted to get the date. I can't have any of the discussion, but I think it's okay to ask when you send it. So I'll look it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, that concludes our agenda for this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Mr. Summers and Mr. Freeman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned.